In this previous video, I showed you a simple, quick, easy, and inexpensive way to convert a pop-up system to drip. In this video, I'll show you the conventional way to do it. In the previous video on this topic, I was converting a pop-up system that was watering an orchard. I replaced two of the pop-ups with Rainbird retro kits like this and installed drip tubing around the fruit trees. Because the pop-ups were 12-inch pop-ups, that meant the bodies were 18 inches long using side inlets. And to remove them, I would have a lot of digging to do. Instead, I installed these Rainbird Zera caps, and I showed another way to do it by using these Hunter shutoff nozzles. You can use these shutoff nozzles on any pop-up that uses female thread nozzles. The situation we're dealing with in this video is that the drip line was already installed before I got there. This used to be a lawn, but recently was re-landscaped with drought-resistant plants. The drip line that runs the perimeter of this area was originally tied into the drip line on the other side of the fence in the backyard. The valve for that line is in the backyard. That is a lot of load on that line running both front and back. The owners asked if I could resolve this. No problem. Okay, on this job, they've had all this re-landscape. This used to be lawn, and there's pop-ups in here along this side here. And then this was re-landscaped back here. Drip was put in along here, and then it went under this wall, and it comes out here and waters all this. But it's a lot on this line. It's waters stuff in the backyard too, so we want to isolate the backyard in this situation. And we have the valve that was operating these pop-ups right here now unused, and we're going to use this line to water this drip here. It's already in place. So what we need to do is to find where the drip line is here, the tubing, and we're going to cut it on the side and crimp it. And then over here I'm going to find it, and we're going to convert this pop-up to drip that will handle all this. And I'm going to cap all these other pop-ups. And to find those, obviously we just turn that line on, and I used my trenching shovel there to scrape away the bark at each one of the pop-ups real quick, just to identify where they are. I don't know if you can tell, but the water pressure is pretty high here, so we're going to make sure we have a pressure regulator on this drip line. So over here, I've got to find the drip line here. This is pretty thick, so I'm going to use my trenching shovel, and I'm going to score across this way. We know that the center of the plant is right here, so the drip line is probably to the left or right of that. So I'm going to focus first here and then here, and if that doesn't come up with anything, then I'll do the middle. Try to cut down on anything that takes time. Okay, I found it, and it's heading down there, and then it goes down, and somehow it goes under this wall right here. I don't know if they converted to PVC, which is the proper thing to do, but it's kind of looking like they just stuck it under the wall, which isn't good because that can kink and so forth. So I want as much tubing here as possible in case somebody wants to plant something here in the future. I'm going to cut that and crimp it. Okay, I found it on this side, and it goes under the rock there, and it's heading horizontal to this board. So it's possible that tubing comes under the fence and tees right here, that way and that way. So I'm gonna check and see if that's true. Okay, apparently it's true, because we have the tubing here, you can see is heading off that direction, and we have this here. So apparently there's a T under here, which lines up with where that tubing is right here. Goes straight here and then tees off. So that's important because we have to undo this, since we're going to be tying this tubing into that pop-up there. Well, not to the pop-up, but to the piping under it. I'm going to be capping all those, digging up those pop-ups and capping the risers, except for that one. Originally, I was going to use one of these Rainbird 1800 conversion kits where that pop-up is, but that could create a tripping hazard with the fitting and stuff in the tubing that's on top of it, being along the sidewalk there. So I opted to install this here instead at the valve, and then we don't have that problem. Before I get started with digging things up, I'm going to put the pressure regulator Y filter assembly on here, and while the glue is drying, then I can be working on the rest of this over here. So we'll shut the water off here first. Okay. If you need to learn how to install this on an existing anti-siphon valve assembly, watch my short on the subject linked below. Okay, while this is drying, I've left this off on purpose. This goes here. I left it off so that the gases from the chemical reaction down here have a place to escape. While that's drying, I will work on this over here. Okay, I've got this uncovered. I'm going to have to cut this weed cloth here to get at the tubing. I'll just use this. It's nice and sharp. Okay, so here's the T. I'm just going to cut it here, and then cut this T off, and then reconnect it with a coupler. I don't need to crimp this down here because there's no water in it anymore. Sometimes people, especially on drip tubing, will loop something at the end. In other words, connect the two ends together down there. And we also need to know that. So I'm going to go down to the last plant on this side and the last plant on that side and see what the status is down there. Okay, actually it ends on this side here. It ends right here. So we don't really need to check this side. When you're digging up the pop-ups, if you have bark or rock covering the soil, scrape it back far enough so that you can do your work. I try to keep things neat and tidy while I'm working the best I can, so that it makes it easy to put it back together, and I leave less mess behind, hopefully no mess. In this case here, this soil here is clay, and it's going to stain this walkway here if I put it here. So you can either scrape the bark back further so that you can create a pile of soil here without putting it on top of the bark. You want to keep the two separated. Or you can put a tarp here, which is what I'm going to do, and put it on the tarp. Normally I'd rather just scrape this back enough so I can keep the soil here, and then I can do this kind of in a methodical way by digging each of these up and then going back and capping them and burying them. But in this case, this bark is very thick and heavy, and I don't want to be creating more work for myself that way. So I'm just going to do these one at a time, which is not my norm, but this is a special situation here. So I'm just going to put the soil here, cap it, put the soil back, move on to the next one. Okay, I've got this dug out, pop-ups removed, and we put the cap on there, but it's going to be tough down in that tight space to put Teflon tape on there, so instead I'm going to use Teflon paste. And the way I'll do it is I'll put the Teflon paste in here, which is not the normal way to do it. Usually you put on the male threads, not the female threads. The reason is that if I go putting it on there, I'm guaranteed to get dirt on the Teflon paste brush, and we don't want to do that. Doesn't take much, and then just screw it on, snug it up. There you go. And you can use pliers to get a little snugger if you'd like. Just don't over tighten it. There we go. Okay, on this one here where I took the pop-up out, that's across from the valve, I'm going to use this assembly here. That's going to screw into the Marlex down there, and then got a 3/4 by half threaded bushing here that's going to screw into this threaded coupler, and this is an N1, and then this is a swivel T here that has a hose washer in there, and then that will go on the drip tubing. So this makes for a flexible connection. Remember, you do not need to put Teflon tape on hose thread. That's what the hose washer is for, to create a seal there. There it is, complete. The reason I set this up this way with that swivel T on there, eventually this tubing is going to have to be replaced. It makes it a lot easier to undo things here if you have a swivel adapter on here rather than compression fittings like these. Because then with the compression fittings, now you have to cut the whole assembly off and start from scratch. This here, all you have to do is unscrew it, put a new, make sure you put a new swivel T on your new assembly and screw it back on, and you don't have to cut any of this. Now we just slide this back on, and just slips right back in there. Finished. It's all swept. Now we'll put this back on. You don't want to turn the irrigation back on, the shutoff valve, until this is on, because if this valve is open internally, then it'll blow water out here like crazy. So get that on first, make sure that's off, and we'll turn this puppy back on. All right, so now we have this isolated, where the valve in the backyard handles just that part of the drip line now, and this valve here is going to handle just the front. So here we go. No pop-ups. You can hear it spitting and sputtering. And it should be obvious the reason why I put that at an angle. Normally we'd put it straight out like that, but it's to stay out of the way of this ball valve here, so there's easy access to it. I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comment section below. Remember the free downloads that can help you with your irrigation, and also remember the resources site linked below that has most of the products for sale that I've discussed in this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.